everyone. I'm back for another video, my first video of 2019. So, the 2020 presidential election is coming up, actually sooner than you think it may be. And the Democrats are already looking at who they're going to run against President Trump. And there's a big field of candidates this time around. So I thought I'd Google the 2020 Democratic primary candidates, or potential candidates anyway, take a look at them and just kind of see who may run. And I'm just gonna let you know what I think about them. And this is just my opinion, so there's no like correct or incorrect answer or whatever. It's just what I think will happen. And again, if you agree or disagree with me, please always leave a comment below. So there were 22, but I don't. The last two kind of got like hard to describe because there's like disclaimers about them. So I'm just gonna start off with the top 20 according to Kiplinger is what it's called, Kiplinger.com, and then we're going to put a link in the description for it. So, the first candidate they mention is Martin O'Malley, former governor of Maryland, I believe. He ran for the Democratic nomination back in 2016 and lost to Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. He conceded right after the Iowa caucus was called because he didn't get like more than 1% of the vote or whatever. And O'Malley's biggest problem was that he never really got the same attention and didn't stand out among more moderate Democrats like Hillary Clinton did, and he didn't appeal to like the far left Democrats the way Bernie Sanders did. So he was kind of that guy in the middle that everyone forgot about. And in this Democratic field, I think there's so many other candidates and so many, not being mean, but so many better candidates. I don't really see Martin O'Malley gaining much attention in the polls or becoming a possibility. So O'Malley, I don't think makes it. I gotta keep closing these odds up. So Senator Chris Murphy from the state of Connecticut. So I feel like he's kind of a guy that not a lot of people know too much about, and you kind of have the description on the right, and he's kind of been a big proponent of a big outspoken critic of the NRA, which will be popular with some Democrats. I just don't think he really brings anything too unique, I would say, to the Democratic field. I just think there's, similar to Martin O'Malley, there's a lot of other candidates that are kind of more bold in positions they have and kind of stand out more. Because President Trump won by getting out energy and getting out voters and getting his fan base fired up. And if the Democrats are going to win, they need to do the same thing. And I don't know if Chris Murphy would be the way to go. Now, Senator Jeff Merkley, I believe, of Oregon, he said that by the end of the year he would decide if he was going to run or not, or he would at least start considering it. And it said that he's stayed in conversation with people in New Hampshire and Iowa, which are the first two states that are having their primaries or caucuses in 2020, and that's kind of how it always is. So it looks like he could potentially be setting the groundwork to run. I don't know how well Jeff Merkley would do, because I think the top candidates we're going to get to in a second, they kind of feel like would overshadow him. But if he can make it past Iowa and New Hampshire, I think he may have a shot, depending on how the field like widows out. Terry McAuliffe, former governor of Virginia. McAuliffe's he's an interesting one because he's more of that Hillary Clinton moderate part of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, in my opinion, similar to the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party now is kind of split between the more moderate Clinton-like Democrats and the far left Bernie Sanders, now Ocasio-Cortez Democrats as well. And that's just on the Democratic side. Republicans, of course, have something similar going on too. But Terry McAuliffe kind of appeals to the Clinton Democrats, but a lot of the other Bernie Sanders Democrats are mad because Hillary Clinton couldn't win in 2016 against President Trump, who, in their eyes, was easily beatable. So I don't think Terry McAuliffe would get the nomination because I think a big percentage of the Democrats wouldn't want to vote for him. So Governor Jay Inslee of Washington, I believe, and I don't know why. He says he's making stops in Iowa and New Hampshire. I just think that a Democrat governor, a very Democratic state, in this field isn't going to stand out compared to someone like Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden or like that. So I don't have anything against Governor Inslee. I just think with all the attention going around, I don't think he's going to find a way to stick out. Because that's a lot of the thing. A lot of these candidates are going to drop out or not make it simply due to name recognition. So Eric Holder, he was President Obama's first Attorney General, and I'm literally like I'll say 99% sure he's probably gonna run, and I think he's an interesting one because even though he was only the Attorney General, technically he has ties to the Obama administration, and a lot of Democrats are kind of wanting to go back to how Obama ran things. So getting his Attorney General would be kind of an interesting way to try to bring back some of those Obama voters. Whether or not it helps in a Democratic primary, I'm not sure, with the party being split. But I think if there is Democrats who are interested in trying to go back to the Obama days, Eric Holder may be a possible candidate. So Representative John Delaney, he's from Maryland. He filed his presidential papers a while ago, actually, like way before the 2018 midterms. And I'm not gonna lie here. I don't really see any way of him making it, because if he filed a long time ago, and this is the first time I've ever heard his name, I don't think he's gonna have a chance. Also, he's a representative, and not knocking any congressman or congresswoman, but generally senators and governors seem to have more name recognition and better success toward running for national office like the presidency. Although Beto O'Rourke, will get to that in a second, I'm pretty sure. I'd imagine it'd be on this list. I haven't looked at this list yet. I literally shut my eyes and scrolled through to 20. I didn't actually look at any of the candidates yet. So number 12, we have Governor John Hickenlooper, former governor or current governor of Colorado. So he's an interesting one because Governor Hickenlooper, from what I tell, is has some liberal stances, but also has some moderate stances, so he kind of appeals to both sides of the Democrats, if you will. Not to mention, technically Colorado I'd still consider to be a swing state. It's leaning to the left now, but it's still technically a swing state. And he's been able to get reelected twice now in a purple state. So he's able to kind of keep those Democrat voters in his column. Also went over independents multiple times, which is going to be very, very useful for the Democrats if they want to win. And he has traveled to Iowa and New Hampshire, as I mentioned earlier, two states Democrats often travel to early on in the primary season. So if he was to get in, that'd be an interesting one. Kind of appeal to the more moderate, I think, Democratic voter. So Governor Steve Bullock of Montana, he's a Democrat. Oh, obviously he's a Democrat, but Democrat governor from Montana. The only thing I would say about this one is he can run, and even though he's governor there, he's still not going to win Montana. And from the Democratic Party's perspective, I don't really see why they would try to run. I mean, yeah, it's a Trump state, so it's not going to be too competitive, but why would they try to run a Democrat governor for president from a very conservative state? At the federal level, anyway. The state level is a different argument, but at the federal level, Montana is a solid Republican state. So I don't really see Steve Bullock running. Or if he does run, I don't really see him making it far. I think he could be a candidate that runs and then may drop out right after Iowa. I can see that happening. So Michael Bloomberg, former mayor of New York. Honestly, every single election cycle, I feel like Michael Bloomberg is rumored to run and then ultimately turns away from it. This year, I'm not too sure, to be honest. Because I feel like President Trump proved if you have the name recognition and you have the money, you can run for president and you may be successful. Maybe now Michael Bloomberg may be like, you know what, if he can do it, maybe I can do it. So I could see him potentially getting in. It depends if a lot of candidates start saying no. If he gets in early or forces other candidates out, he could become a big factor. He's going to be more popular, I think, in the northeastern regions because he is from New York, so New York would be New York, New Jersey, maybe the rest of New England. He may have an effect, but I don't know if he'd catch too much ground. So we have Mayor Eric Garcetti. He is the mayor of Los Angeles currently, and he is of Mexican descent, And I think that what he represents is kind of like a stark kind of contrast to President Trump, who he's pretty much opposed to a lot of the border wall or any of that. He's very opposed to that. President Trump's very in favor of the border wall. So that's kind of like the polar opposite politically. But then again, he's a mayor of LA, and I really don't see a mayor getting the Democratic nomination because I just don't think, even though it's LA, he doesn't have the name recognition really. So I don't think Eric Garcetti really gets past or through the primary. Senator Elizabeth Warren. So she's a senator from the state of Massachusetts. She recently, a few days ago, launched an exploratory committee basically saying she's running. And I believe she's making stops in Iowa and New Hampshire very soon. And she really, over the past few years, more than ever, she's begun to please the more far-left progressive Democratic voters and has really turned off a lot of the Republican voters. So I think Senator Warren's kind of the first candidate on this list that's a stark contrast of the Democratic Party going farther to the left. And I think it's going to be tough for Senator Warren to get too much attention because obviously President Trump and her have this ongoing feud. So she's going to get attention from Democrats on that one. But then again, if other progressive candidates are running, for instance, Beto O'Rourke or Bernie Sanders, they're going to be getting some of the vote too. So unless Senator Warren finds a way to kind of like stand out more than saying, oh, Donald Trump picks on me or something like that, there's nothing really about her persona. There's nothing really that stands out about her. About her, the way she speaks about trying to connect to average, everyday Americans, if she really runs on that and appeals to that, that could be a possible way for her to get more, better polling numbers and name recognition. But I just think with other candidates out there, it's going to be very tough for her to win. I think I could see her. I think no matter what, she's making it to at least New Hampshire. I think if Senator Warren doesn't get the nomination, she's dropping out after New Hampshire. That's my early prediction for that. Senator Kamala Harris, in my opinion, I think she's a candidate that the media, mainstream media, such as like CNN, NBC, CBS, all those, she's the candidate that I think they all want. Because it makes sense. From a senator's standpoint, she's a young senator, she's African American, and I think this kind of brings up an appeal to a lot of people in the media who are hoping she's not too far left, so she'll get some of the Hillary voters, she'll get some of the Obama voters, hopefully she'll get some of the Bernie voters too, and she'll win over enough independents to try to beat President Trump. And she is definitely one of the more exciting Democratic candidates they have to run. My only concern with her is, aside from the Kavanaugh whole situation, her name really hasn't been too talked about too much compared to Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders. And you have to ask, outside of California and the West Coast, how well would her appeal be in the Rust Belt or in traditional swing states like Ohio and Florida that have always been swing states for the past elections? Meanwhile, the Rust Belt just became like toss-up states. Because for a Democrat to win against President Trump, they most likely have to win back the Rust Belt. And I think you'd have to ask on the Democratic side, do you run a more far left candidate like Bernie Sanders, who he may appeal better than the Rust Belt, but will a candidate like Kamala Harris from California appeal to the Rust Belt people? It's up to the Democratic voters. It's hard to say at this point. So number 6, Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey. I think Cory Booker and Kamala Harris are both going to be running as who's going to be the next Obama. Both of them are African American. Both of them, in terms of politics, are very young. Who's going to try to be the next Obama? And if it's Booker versus Harris, I honestly think Kamala Harris takes it. I just think Cory Booker's kind of moment in the sun was the whole Kavanaugh Spartacus thing. That's came and went. I don't think he's really gaining much traction. Not to mention, he's had numerous ties to Wall Street and big corporate money, and that's not something very popular with the Democrats. It's been becoming increasingly less and less popular with the Democrats, too. So I don't really think Cory Booker. I think he'll run. I don't think he'll make it very far. I think I could see him being one of those that runs and then drops out right after Iowa, or maybe holds on and stays till New Hampshire and Nevada, then drops out. I just don't see him going too far. Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio. Now, I'll be honest, he may be the candidate that kind of is the dark horse under the radar candidate that interests me the most. Because Senator Sherrod Brown is kind of the early progressive. He's not as far left as Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, but he has some far left policies as well. What's interesting about him, though, is he comes from the crucial swing state of Ohio. Since 1964, I believe it was, Ohio has accurately predicted the winner of the presidency every single time. And also coincidentally, no Republican in modern times has won the White House without winning the state of Ohio. If Senator Sherrod Brown wins the nomination and goes up against President Trump and he wins the state of Ohio, then that's probably a good sign that if Ohio's going blue, the Rust Belt's most likely going blue too. And Sherrod Brown, being from that region, may be able to appeal there better than say, Cory Booker or Kamala Harris or Terry McAuliffe or stuff like that. Sherrod Brown would be an interesting one, not to mention he was up for re-election in 2018. Remember, President Trump won Ohio by I think it was like 8 or 9 points in 2016. While it was a midterm year, it was supposed to be a Democratic wave year, he won by 6 points still. I mean, that was a lot closer than what a lot of people expected it would be. But he still won nonetheless. Progressive senator in a state that's going slightly more and more to the right each election. If he could get through, he would definitely be an interesting one. He's one to keep an eye on, in my opinion. Number 4, Senator Amy Klobuchar. So, Senator Klobuchar from Minnesota, she's, I think, an interesting candidate that will be more pleasing towards the Bernie Sanders wing of the party. She's kind of like, in my opinion, she's a progressive, far left progressive, but doesn't really get much attention in the media. The media will spend far more time discussing Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren before they'll bring up Senator Klobuchar. And I don't really see that changing too much. So while they have her listed as the number 4 candidate, I'm not too sure if I see her getting in to the presidential race. She might, but she also just got reelected in Minnesota. So it's up to her if she really wants to run again. Technically she can, because she just got reelected, so her seat's secure for a long time. And if she does get the nomination and has to give up her seat, it's a Democrat governor in Minnesota, so there's really no harm to her running, because they're also playing Democrat anyway. So if she wants to run, she can. I just think her biggest problem is she doesn't really have the biggest name recognition, and that's something she'll have to change. But if she can get the name recognition in the Rust Belt, she can definitely be an appealing candidate. So number 3, Beto O'Rourke. Beto O'Rourke is most famous for this past 2018 midterms running against Senator Ted Cruz. The state of Texas has been a very conservative state for a very long time. He lost to Ted Cruz by, I think it was less than 3%. Was the final total. I think it was 2.2 or something like that. And the thing about Beto O'Rourke is the Democrats are already phrasing him as the next Obama. This young, attractive guy that can speak really good on a prompter, can get people motivated, can really gather up minority support, and will kind of bring this change and hope to the election. The only problem about Beto O'Rourke is that he lost. And I think if he does get the nomination, he's not going to win Texas. Because no matter what you think of him, President Trump is technically more popular in Texas than Senator Ted Cruz was. In fact, Senator Ted Cruz could have probably lost if President Trump didn't come down and do the rally with him. So, Beto O'Rourke lost in Texas, so he's not going to win there. I don't really see him winning any of the southern states like Georgia or Arizona that are up for grabs. And he has a lot of money raised from donors throughout the midterms, which is good. But you have to ask, if he's a new wave of progressive voter, will he appeal to the Rust Belt? And that's the biggest concern I have about Beto O'Rourke is I don't know if he'd be able to win back the Rust Belt voters. I think he'll do a lot better in Texas and Arizona than previous Democrats, but I don't think he'll do enough to hold on there. But if he ends up taking over and becoming one of the clear-cut frontrunners leading up into Iowa and New Hampshire, this could be an interesting three-way primary race, or potential four-way if Sherrod Brown stays around too. As I mentioned earlier, though, technically since he didn't get elected senator, he would be a former representative, I believe, and representatives don't often get the nomination, but I guess it's the first time for everything, I guess. So number 2 is Senator Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, at this point, pretty much everybody knows who he is. He's a senator from Vermont. He ran against Secretary Hillary Clinton in 2016. He came in second place. And technically, if you come in second place and the candidate that beat you in the primary loses, technically the person that came in second should be considered the frontrunner, at least initially. So, in my opinion, Bernie Sanders is technically the frontrunner right now for the Democratic primary. Polling doesn't necessarily show that too much, but I mean, that is starting to change over time, but initially he was the frontrunner. Senator Bernie Sanders, in my opinion, he will drive up the vote of the far-left Democrats, but then the moderate Democrats, that's where I think things get kind of like iffy. The only concern for Senator Sanders is I think those moderate Democrats, some may vote for President Trump because they can't vote for a socialist. They don't want to vote for President Trump, but they'll either vote for a third-party candidate like Gary Johnson or Jill Stein this time around, or whoever the next party candidates they are. Or if they say, all right, the economy is still doing good, know what, let's give Trump another chance. That's my only concern with Bernie, is that he won't be able to appeal to the more moderate voters. For instance, when far-left progressives ran in 2018, for instance, Andrew Gillum, the election was very, very close, but he still lost. In politics, it doesn't matter. It's usually winner take all. So you have to win. You can't lose, even if it's really close. That's the one thing I'd be worried about Bernie, is he too far left where he's shutting off some Democrats? But only time will tell. All I know is in terms of Rust Belt appeal, he did very well in the primaries, especially in the state of Michigan. And I think if Senator Sanders runs Michigan, I think pretty much almost automatically flips back to the Democratic side. So he may have some appeal there too. Alright, and now the number one candidate, according to Kiplinger, is former Vice President Joe Biden. So Joe Biden, obviously the Vice President to former President Barack Obama. He was a senator from Delaware before that. He was born and grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. So he kind of understands these Rust Belt voters, these kind of blue-collar America voters, that many of them voted for Obama who were disappointed, then came back and voted for President Trump. The only thing about Joe Biden is he appeals to the Hillary voters. He doesn't really appeal to the Bernie. I think the stark contrast of voters, I think it's going to be Bernie gets like all of his base, Biden gets all of like Hillary's base, and then Warren, O'Rourke, Brown, they're kind of trying to like get the rest of the undecided votes to try to like get something going. My only concern about Joe Biden wouldn't be in the Democratic primary, it'd be in the general election, because one thing that Vice President Biden's been known for is making huge gaffes on the campaign trail. I mean, not to say that President Trump hasn't made any gaffes, but President Trump made gaffes and still got elected. That's because Hillary Clinton managed to out-gaff him at literally every step of the way. And from what we've heard on the campaign trail in recent elections, Senator Joe Biden at the time made a lot of speaking gaffes. And I don't know how he would do necessarily in a debate, because I remember the 2016 debates, most people agreed that Mike Pence pretty much, well, that was Tim Kaine, but a lot of people thought that Joe Biden wouldn't really hold up as well as Hillary Clinton in a debate and would probably slightly do better than Tim Kaine. But I think if Joe Biden, he just has to avoid the big gaffes. If he can do that, he may have a significant chance at becoming the next president. But if he's gaffe prone on the campaign trail and the economy is doing good, then President Trump does have a realistic chance of saying I got re-elected again. So those have been the top 20 Democratic candidates according to Kiplinger. I'm going to try to put the link in the description below if you want to look at it yourself in a more detailed look. Over the next few days and few weeks, I'm going to try to start doing some early predictions. So the front runners like Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Sherrod Brown, I'm going to try to do those predictions against Donald Trump. I'm going to try to get those out soon. So yeah, if you like the video, please leave a like, comment below. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd appreciate if you subscribe. Yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.